And so to move on, we want to give a little bit of a trip down the Manafort memory lane and explain what's going on with Manafort and what it might mean. So let's take a look at this timeline to back when Paul Manafort was Donald Trump's campaign chairman in August of 2016. On the 14th, the New York Times reported that handwritten ledgers indicated that Manafort had received more than $12 million in undisclosed cash payments from a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine between 2007 and 2012. Then, 3 days later, Manafort denied an AP report that he'd helped secretly to route over $2 million to prominent Washington lobbying firms in 2012. That very same day, Steve Bannon was named Donald Trump's campaign chief executive, and 2 days after that, Manafort was pushed out of the campaign. So now, jump ahead 8 months to April of this year. The AP obtaining financial records that showed 2 wire transfers to Paul Manafort's firm, corresponding to those Ukrainian ledgers from the previous year. This led Manafort to retroactively register as a foreign agent on June 27th, disclosing $17 million in payments from Ukraine. Then, on July 19th, 1 week before the raid of his home, just the other day, the New York Times reported that Manafort had been in debt to pro-Russia interests by as much as $17 million, citing records filed in Cyprus just months before he joined the Trump campaign, a job for which the Times had earlier reported Manafort offered to do for no pay. Manafort's spokesman did not address whether the debts might have existed at one time, but he maintained that the Cyprus records were, quote, stale. Not sure how a record could be stale. Anyway, 2 days later, the Wall Street Journal reported that Special Counsel Robert Mueller was investigating Manafort for possible money laundering. And on July 22nd, Reuters reported that Mueller's team was researching Manafort's financial records to gain leverage for his cooperation in their probe of Russian collusion. 1 day before the raid on July 25th, Manafort spoke with the Senate Intelligence Committee, and the Senate Judiciary Committee withdrew a subpoena after they said Manafort would work in good faith to negotiate a future appearance. Hours later, then came that FBI raid, Manafort's apartment in the Washington suburbs around 6 a.m., which his spokesman said he cooperated with, along with other requests. Then yesterday, Manafort's spokesman said he's in the process of retaining his former counsel, Miller and Chevalier, to represent him in the Office of the Special Counsel Investigation, and that Manafort's current firm, Wilmer & Hale, no longer represents him. Big legal shift there for Paul Manafort. And then finally, yesterday, President Trump asked about the early morning raid on Manafort's apartment by the FBI investigators last month. Here he is.
Mr. President, was it appropriate for the FBI to raid the home of Paul Manafort pre-dawn?
I thought it was a very, very strong signal or whatever. I know Mr. Manafort. I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but I know him. He was with the campaign, as you know, for a very short period of time, relatively short period of time, but I've always known him to be a good man. I thought it was a very, they do that very seldom. So I was surprised to see it. I was very, very surprised to see it.
Have you spoken
we
to
haven't
the FBI
really been involved.
Excuse me? Have you spoken to the FBI director about it, or the?
No, I have not. I have not. But to do that early in the morning, whether or not it was appropriate, you'd have to ask them. I've always found Paul Manafort to be a very decent man. And he's like a lot of other people, probably makes consultant fees from all over the place. Who knows? I don't know. But I thought that was a very, that was pretty tough stuff.
Just as a point of fact, Paul Manafort and Donald Trump have known each other for 30 years, and Paul Manafort has an apartment in Trump Tower. They have a long, extensive relationship, and so to hear Donald Trump now saying, never met him, hardly knew him, what the heck, is a little strange. Well, let's bring in law professor from George Washington University, Jonathan Turley, to talk about the legal implication of what's going on. Mr. Turley, Professor Turley, talk about where we are now. Let's respect with the thread that relates to Paul Manafort and what kind of jeopardy he's in, and how that kind of jeopardy might produce a certain kind of jeopardy for Donald Trump.
Well, he's clearly the person most at risk at this stage in the investigation, largely because he has credible criminal allegations against him that are concrete, specific, things like money laundering, failure to register as foreign agent, possible tax and banking issues. Many of those are not normally prosecuted, but that doesn't mean that they cannot be prosecuted. Prosecutors tend to look for people that they can get leverage through these types of criminal charges, and Paul Manafort may be a target-rich environment for them.
So, Jonathan, what's your instinct as a lawyer, as an observer of this case, that Bob Mueller and the special prosecutor's office, they are basically going down the Al Capone trail with Paul Manafort, that they could hang him on tax charges.
Well, I think that clearly they wanted to send a message with this. I actually think people are a little bit too thrilled to see a Trump associate subject of a no-knock warrant. I've been a critic of no-knock warrants for years. It's very troubling. I think it was gratuitous. I think it was excessive. There are about 20,000 of these a year that occur. It is not the norm to have a no-knock warrant in a white-collar crime case. No-knock warrants were designed primarily for dangerous drug dealers. The Supreme Court has expressed its concern. Lower courts have expressed its concern. But federal judges have entirely refused to carry out their duty to try to restrict this. I mean, what did they think he was going to do? Try to flush his laptop down the toilet or meet him at the door with a Glock? I mean, it seemed to me rather excessive.
Joe, you there?
You say it's gratuitous. Yeah, I'm here. You say it's gratuitous, but we don't know what information Mueller had.
That's
we
right.
don't know where he's going, so we don't really know whether it's gratuitous or not in the first case. And secondly, we had an attorney on earlier this morning that said that this had happened to his clients before when the FBI wanted to confirm that they, in fact, did not have classified material. So what makes it gratuitous in this case? Or are you just talking generally about FBI raids of this kind?
No, most of us on the criminal defense side have had no-knock warrants occur with their clients. But in a white-collar crime setting, no. It is not the norm. No-knocks are supposed to be used in dangerous situations. It is certainly true that they're used now far more than they should be. The point is not that the warrant was unlawful or that it's suggested by Dowd that this evidence could somehow be suppressed. I don't think that's true. I think the warrant is valid. It's likely to be upheld. The point is that there was no basis where it's excessive to do the no-knock, to come barging into the house pre-dawn as if he's a physical danger or he would destroy evidence.
But what about the preservation of evidence? What about a laptop? What about a computer? Computers throughout the house. What about external drives?
But Joe, is he going to start? Do you think he's going to start swallowing thumb drives? I mean, all they do is knock on the door. If he doesn't open it, they take the door down. The point is that this seemed to be a bit gratuitous in showing up at his bedroom door on a no-knock. Now, this might be a small point, but many of us on the civil liberties side have been arguing against the rise in no-knocks for years.
But Jonathan, the process of getting a no-knock subpoena entails having to go to a judge, a neutral judge, and pointing out to the judge that they are looking for specific items that were not included in the information handout that Manafort and his lawyers had provided earlier. It's not as if they just get it on whim. It's not you know this. I mean, it's not a grand jury subpoena. It's a no-knock warrant that requires extensive proof to a neutral judge. And then the warrant is sealed as to what they were going after.
No, I have no question that they were going after valid evidence. The question is the means of the no-knock, not the search itself. They clearly made out the case that there was evidence there that they thought they would find. But the ACLU and other groups for years have been saying that judges are just blindly signing no-knocks, when in the past, judges would say, look, you really don't need to do a no-knock, just do a warrant, do a search, knock on the door. If they don't open it, take the door down. But these no-knocks have resulted in my view, a great deal of abuse. And whether it's Paul Manafort or not, it should concern people. I don't think there was any justification to do a no-knock as opposed to a normal search warrant.
I mean, Jonathan, the context here, too, is this Capitol Hill investigation. I mean, this came clearly the day after he had gone to these committees with some information, but there was a big... Chuck Grassley was very angry with how Manafort was or wasn't being forthcoming. There was a real sense that he was not giving them everything that was available to him. They subpoenaed him. They finally said, okay, fine, we'll drop the subpoena if you, come this far on our evidence. That's when the FBI went in and said, okay, we clearly need access to this information because you're not giving it up.
Yeah, we're hearing different things. I mean, Manafort's attorney says that they were never, this information was never demanded by the FBI before the warrant, and they were a bit peeved about that. But I think you're right. There clearly has not been as forthcoming an exchange of information as there should be. The point of fact is this stuff is going to get released. They're going to get everything they want. And so, in my view, they should have turned it over earlier.
Jonathan, Elise Jordan here. With all of this news about the raid, the pre-dawn raid on Paul Manafort's home, another blockbuster story has kind of been forgotten. Just that last Friday, the New York Times reported that Mike Flynn had failed to report about $400,000 that possibly had been funneled through a Turkish business, but was from the Turkish government. How much of a problem is this for Mike Flynn?
I think it's a big problem. Flynn and Manafort are the obvious targets for the prosecutors. Mueller has brought on prosecutors who are known to flip witnesses. You do that by pressuring them. Any crime they find, they can use as leverage. That's why there's been a lot of talk about the tactical use of pardons, to pardon these guys and remove the leverage. But stuff like this is very, very serious. When you've got a special counsel in the field, these things can be criminalized. They effectively can be weaponized by a special counsel.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan Turley. As always, we really appreciate you being on. And still ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.